I've recently been rather disillusioned by mainstream games because, they really all seem to be the same. One of the games that has recently triggered this thought in my mind is Anthem, and Anthem is produced by, or rather developed by BioWare, and I'm a fan of the studio. I can't tell you the countless amount of hours that I put in Mass Effect 1. Probably, probably somewhere between 30 and 35 days, totals worth of gameplay. I played it a lot, but it's, when I look at Anthem, it's basically the exact same game as Destiny. And Destiny, in my opinion, is just a nothing game. It's one of those games where you go into some cave, you fight some enemies that are slightly stronger than you get stronger, and then the next cave you go into has enemies proportionally stronger to where you are now, and it's just basically, the entire game is just one big grind, and there's nothing else to it. There's no enjoyment outside of that. And that's kind of the point here, is that I think many mainstream games, now notice I said many, but not all, many of them coming out these days are, and not necessarily these days either, I know I keep qualifying my statements, but it's been happening for years. They're either bland, or they're repeats of something else, or disappointments, like Kingdom of Hearts 3. I know I haven't played it yet, but from everything I'm seeing and everything I'm hearing, which you can't completely trust, which I don't trust everything I see and hear, which is part of the reason why I make my analysis videos, is because, I see that everybody's ranting and raving about a game. Let's say they're saying it's a wonderful game, but I'm skeptical about it. So I play the game and I see that it's not that. But yeah, I think many mainstream games they fall short on delivery of good content. It's almost like devs are adding high fructose corn syrup of content into games just to please a population, but that content that they're adding doesn't have any lasting value. The flavor of today seems to be battle royale style games. Things like PUBG and Fortnite, and even, Black Ops started doing that as well. So it's on the AAA scale as well. But of course, soon that's going to change. Before Battle Royale was something else, and then after Battle Royale, it'll be another thing. But one demand that gamers have yet to keep quiet about is high graphical fidelity. They are, I guess I should say, we make a lot of noise about a game's graphics, to the point where we want to see the stubble on a guy's face. And graphical fidelity has been increasing at a nearly untrackable rate, because of how fast it's going. But it may not be positively contributing to the field, because devs spend a lot of their time creating realistic graphics. It takes a lot of both monetary and talent resources to produce games with super highly photorealistic graphics, to the point where they're putting so many resources into that, and there are only a finite amount of resources, and they're not getting put into other portions of the game that perhaps should deserve it, like more gameplay or story or anything like that. And I think that's one of the reasons that illustrates my disillusionment with games, because they're focusing on the wrong elements. Now, video games as a medium is still in its childhood, not even adolescence. So I think that we will continue to increase graphical fidelity to a point of photorealism, and then at some point, it's going to be cross-platform, where PC and every console is going to have extremely good graphics, to the point of in-game rendered photorealism. And at that point, I think priorities are going to shift. And this is something I'm calling, if I can coin it as this, as the singularity of graphics. I call it that. There's a concept in the realm of artificial intelligence, AI, called the singularity, which you can read about if you like, but that's kind of where I'm adopting the term from. It's going to be a singularity of graphics. Now, what's going to happen is we're going to get all those graphics perfect, photorealism, cross-platform, to the point where it's going to be expected, but it's also going to be possible. So there isn't a conflict there. But I think once that happens, gamers, or we as a gaming population, will begin to depart from our expectation to graphics and be able to focus on the quality of the gameplay or story or anything else, any other aspect that the game is achieving. And this is why I think it's interesting, is because video games at that point, it's kind of like a reversal, in the beginning of games development, in the late 1900s, there was a focus on gameplay because there was simply not enough power to have high graphical fidelity. Consoles and computers would brag about having kilobytes of RAM. And it's funny to think about. And I think the same thing is going to happen after the singularity, where such good graphics are going to be expected so we can focus on other things. And at that point, once devs will be able to focus on the quality of the game itself, games will start to will begin releasing that are better than the legendary games we have now. As of right now, we have spectacular games that are quintessential pieces demonstrating what value video games can bring to the world, like Shadow of the Colossus, or Super Metroid, or Halo 3, or Dishonored, or Shin Megami Tensei, or Mary Kate and Ashley Sweet 16 License to Drive, and of course many others that I'm missing. And although these will remain pieces of gold of this era, I think they'll be dwarfed by what's to come after the singularity. And naturally, I would love to speculate about what kinds of games or trends or qualities that will emerge in video games after that point. But it's really difficult to tell, even if I did an in-depth analysis of all of the trends in gaming now, and then tried to map that onto a curve about how that's going to translate into future. And then what if you remove the component of attempting to have high graphical fidelity? You just remove that as an element, and then you can focus on other things. But I think it's so difficult to tell that it's at this point in time. I'm recording this in February 2019. It's just not even worth attempting to make that analysis. But maybe I'm kind of romanticizing the singularity of graphics, and that it's all going to be good and well after this point comes, because perhaps it's going to be replaced by another tall demand by gamers. I don't know what it is, but and I doubt this will occur, but that's simply based on my intuition and guesswork and really nothing else. What might spawn after that is something like an FPS war, where all of the platforms, all of the consoles will confidently run these photorealistic games, or at least the equivalent of it in fidelity. And so that's, kind of the level playing ground. But then the manufacturers will obsess over being able to run the games at a higher and higher frame rate. Now, I don't think that specific example is exactly what's going to happen, mainly because that's not even happening now. I mean, console gamers seem to be happy with even 30 FPS on games that should have higher frame rates, like a first-person shooter like Battlefield, which, greatly benefits from having a higher frame rate. But that's not really a concern right now. And I don't think that would be the case after the Singularity, but that's just an example I threw out. We could have another tall demand that gamers are asking for, and that will be the next thing to be fulfilled, and that's going to be the next singularity of whatever, right? So I find myself looking to other games to get enjoyment from, which is part of the reason why you don't see too many mainstream, huge mainstream games being analyzed on my channels, because it seems like a lot of them are, kind of disappointments. Even if you look at something that seems to be really loved, like the new God of War, still there are things wrong with it, and that's kind of a duh statement. Any video game is going to have things wrong with it, but it's things that appeal to the masses that don't make sense in the context of the game. And the thing is, the games industry is suffering from a Hollywood effect, where budgets are becoming so large that they feel obligated to put in more content, which then makes the budget larger and then dilutes the purpose of the game. And I think a good example of something like that is BioShock Infinite, where you have a beloved game series like BioShock, and the devs wanted to implement the system of different realities and time travel and the vigors and everything that you can use, and also wanted to tackle strong, prominent, and difficult to discuss issues like slavery and race. But then they just dilute it, and they don't even attempt to make anything of it. And they put in, I could go on forever about BioShock Infinite, but you put in a strong emphasis on FPS gameplay, first person shooter gameplay, in a game that's emphasizing different realities and time travel and all of these things, but it doesn't match the game at all, and that's merely a symptom of trying to appeal to the masses, when it doesn't. It not only does it not benefit the game, but it actively detriments it. And many mainstream games suffer from that, I think. So I would say that roughly encapsulates what I'm saying is my disillusionment with many mainstream games recently. And I'm sure tomorrow I'll remember things to include that I didn't include now. And this is kind of something that's in flux, something that's always changing. I'll notice something in the near future and the far future that contributes to my disillusionment. But that's why have sort of a cynical view of many of the games coming out recently. And I think it's partly justified, but I guess it's also a sign of optimism that I can take from, in the sense that we have room to improve from here. Or I say we, I really mean game developers.